Think about the most famous person you can imagine. Usually that image involves flashy cars, red carpets, and a certain level of untouchable ego. But then there's Keanu Reeves. He is the ultimate paradox of the modern age. On one hand, he's the guy who defined the action genre for two different generations. He's the one, he's the Baba Yaga. He's a man whose face is plastered on billboards from New York to Tokyo. And yet, on the other hand, he's the internet's boyfriend. This title wasn't born from a PR campaign. It was a gift from people who saw his genuine heart. They saw a man who has millions but still rides the subway like a regular guy. They saw a man who gives up his seat for people with heavy bags. They saw a soul that seems incredibly grounded in a town that can easily swallow your soul. But here's the thing that will really make you stop and think. Did you know that behind the cool, calculated exterior of John Wick and the stoic hero vibes of Neo lies a series of tragedies so devastating they would have broken almost anyone else? It's easy to look at his life now and think he's just a lucky guy with a great career, but his history is marked by deep scars. We often wonder why he seems so quiet, so contemplative, and so remarkably humble. The truth is that humility wasn't born out of luck. It was forged in a fire of personal loss that most of us can't even fathom. You've seen the memes, you've heard the stories, and maybe you've even wondered if he's actually human. Let's talk about that moment in 2010 that changed how the world looked at him. You've definitely seen the picture. It's been shared millions of times. It's the sad Keanu meme. In the photo, he's sitting on a generic park bench, looking down, with a half-eaten sandwich in his hand. His hair is a bit messy, and his clothes look like something he just pulled out of a laundry basket. For the internet, it was a hilarious moment of relatability. We all felt like sad Keanu at some point in our lives, right? But for Keanu, it was just a Tuesday. He just said he was hungry. However, for those who knew his history, that image carried a different weight. It wasn't just a funny photo. It felt like a rare glimpse into the heart of a man who has spent a lot of his life feeling fundamentally alone, even when the whole world is shouting his name. It was a soul carrying heavy burdens in the middle of a crowded city. His journey is nothing short of a miracle of human spirit. He evolved from a struggling young actor into a man who lost his best friend, his child, and his partner in a terrifyingly short span of time. Yet somehow, he emerged on the other side as the most humble billionaire in the industry. It's a roadmap of survival that defies logic. Usually when Hollywood stars go through this much pain, we see them spiral. We see the tabloid headlines about meltdowns and chaos. But with Keanu, we see him buying Harley Davidsons for his stunt crew. We see him secretively funding children's hospitals without ever asking for his name to be put on the building. It leads to the most important rhetorical question of all. How does one man lose virtually everything that defines a happy life and still decide to be the kindest person in the room? Why didn't he let the bitterness take over? It's a mystery that makes him a true symbol of resilience. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We want to know who is joining this journey into his incredible life. To truly understand the depth of his strength and where that kindness comes from, we have to travel back in time. We have to go back to the early 1990s, to when his world first started to crumble. To really get inside Keanu's head, we have to look at the first massive crack in his foundation, and it happened right when his star was beginning to shine the brightest. The early 1990s were a whirlwind for him, but in 1993, the neon lights of Hollywood masked a growing, suffocating darkness. You see, Keanu wasn't just a solo act. He had a brother in arms named River Phoenix. They had just finished filming My Own Private Idaho, and their bond was something you rarely see in the cutthroat world of acting. They were kindred spirits. Two young men who felt like outsiders even when they were the biggest names on the marquee. But then came that fateful October night outside the Viper Room when River collapsed and died from a drug overdose at just 23 years old. Something in Keanu shattered. It wasn't just losing a best friend, it was like losing a mirror of his own soul. He has often said that River was one of his most important teachers, and the shock of that tragedy changed his entire perspective on fame. It made him realize how quickly the carpet can be pulled out from under you, even when you're at the top of the world. Can you imagine the weight of that grief while the cameras are still flashing in your face? But hold on, because the universe wasn't done testing him. Fast forward to the late 90s, the era of The Matrix. This should have been the happiest time of his life. Right? He met a beautiful woman named Jennifer Syme, and they fell deeply, genuinely in love. It was the kind of relationship that felt like a sanctuary. By 1999, they were expecting a baby girl, and they even had a name picked out: Ava Archer Syme Reeves. They were building a nursery, buying tiny clothes, and getting ready for a future that looked incredibly bright. But just days before Christmas, the unthinkable happened. Ava was born stillborn. The silence in that delivery room must have been absolutely deafening. You guys, that kind of loss is a vacuum. It sucks the air right out of a relationship. The shared grief was so heavy that it eventually drove Keanu and Jennifer apart. They just couldn't look at each other without seeing the ghost of the life they were supposed to have. But wait, the tragedy doubled down in the most horrific way possible. Only 18 months after they buried their daughter, Jennifer was killed instantly in a violent car accident in Los Angeles. She was only 28. Keanu had to go from grieving his child to burying the woman he loved right next to her. At this point, the world was watching, waiting for him to break. How much can one person actually take before they just give up? He was a man drowning in sorrow, yet he still had to show up to movie sets and be the hero. While he was navigating this public graveyard of his personal life, a private battle was raging behind the scenes. His beloved sister, Kim Reeves, was diagnosed with leukemia. This wasn't a quick fight, it was a grueling decade-long war. This is where we see the real Keanu. He didn't just write checks from a distance. He put his entire career on hold to become her primary caregiver. He was the one cleaning her house, cooking her meals, and sitting by her hospital bed for hours on end. He even reportedly donated $5 million to cancer research and set up his own foundation. But here's the most Keanu thing ever. He refused to put his name on it. He didn't want the PR points. He just wanted his sister to live. This deep-seated pain and the constant fear of loss might explain why he lived like a nomad for nearly a decade. For years, Keanu didn't own a home. He lived out of a suitcase in hotels like the Chateau Marmont. People thought he was just being an eccentric actor, but if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. If you don't have a permanent address, maybe the ghost can't find you. A hotel room is neutral. It doesn't have a nursery that should have been full of life. He was a billionaire, living like a wanderer, a man who owned almost nothing but his motorcycles and his memories. Hollywood was convinced he was on the verge of a total spiral. They expected the tabloid headlines about meltdowns and chaos. But instead of burning out, Keanu did something that absolutely nobody saw coming. He was about to turn all that crushing darkness into a quiet, revolutionary kind of light. Instead of letting the emptiness consume him, Keanu began a quiet, deliberate process of rebuilding his life from the inside out. He didn't hire a flashy PR team to document a big Hollywood comeback. Instead, he funneled his immense grief into a hidden life of dedicated service. For years, he was secretly funding cancer research in children's hospitals without ever once attaching his name to the checks or the buildings. He once mentioned in passing that he has a private foundation that helps hospitals, but he doesn't like to brag or take credit. Think about the selflessness of that. In an industry defined by massive egos, Keanu was writing million-dollar checks in total silence. He didn't need the applause. He just wanted to spare other families the crushing pain he lived through with his sister Kim Reeves during her long battle with leukemia. He chose to be a guardian angel in the shadows, proving that character is truly what you do when nobody is looking. Then came the era we all love, the Keanu-sence. When the world first saw him as John Wick in 2014, something shifted in the cultural zeitgeist. We weren't just watching an action flick, we were watching a man whose eyes held a deep, heavy weight. John Wick is a character defined by the loss of his wife and the search for a way to keep moving forward. It felt like Keanu wasn't just acting, he was channeling decades of his own personal tragedies into every single frame. He turned his personal scars into a cinematic masterpiece, showing us that you can take the shattered pieces of your heart and forge them into something powerful. His resurgence wasn't just about box office success, it was about a man finally reclaiming his place after wandering in the desert of grief for so long. We also have to talk about his beautiful modern-day love story. For a long time, the internet was fiercely protective of him, wondering if he would ever find happiness again after the loss of Jennifer Syme. When he finally stepped out with artist Alexandra Grant, the reaction was one of pure, global joy. People were happy because he chose someone mature, artistic, and genuinely grounded. It wasn't a typical Hollywood cliche, it was a partnership built on mutual respect and shared interests. Seeing him smile next to her felt like a collective victory for everyone who had been rooting for him through the dark years. It was the hard-earned happy ending for the man who had given so much of himself to others while asking for nothing in return. But it's the viral stories that truly make him the gold standard for how to be a human. Remember him buying an ice cream just to sign the receipt for a young fan. Or the time his flight was diverted to Bakersfield. Instead of calling a private limo, he stayed with the stranded passengers, played country music on his phone, and helped organize a van to get everyone to their final destination. These are the living evidence of the Keanu Code. He treats a production assistant with the same level of dignity as a big-name director. He practices hover hands out of respect for women's boundaries. He even takes the subway like a regular guy, often giving up his seat to others without a second thought. So, is Keanu Reeves finally at peace? It seems he has finally found a way to carry his ghosts without letting them pull him under. He's shown us that resilience isn't about forgetting the past. It's about honoring it by being the kindest person in the room today. He conquered grief by turning it into radical empathy. What's next for the man who beat the odds? Likely more quiet heroics, more motorcycles, and more incredible movies. Which Keanu story is your absolute favorite, and do you agree he is the most resilient person in Hollywood? Let us know in the comments, and if this journey inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe. In a world where you can be anything, we should all strive to be a little more like Keanu Reeves